Vitalii is the academic dean in the Kiev Theological Seminary and has a very key role there. Not only does he keep all the professors doing their work, but he's also very influential with the younger generation. And that's Vitalii on the left. We've only got half of him at the moment. And then the other rather sort of Politburo looking chap is that's Leonidas over in Greece. So what we've got here, we've got Catholic countries, we've got Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox and different aspects. So very different contexts. So what I want to do, right, I've said enough. I'll pose a question or two. Just to try this out, can I begin with Vitalii? Can you hear me? No, he can't. That's Vitalii over in the far right. Can he hear me? It doesn't look as though he can hear me. All right. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just get going with these chaps then, and then we'll see. But obviously we've got Spain, we've got Romania, stroke Transylvania in particular. Has your church, maybe you can talk to us a little bit, has your own church grappled with how to engage with people within the context you are, and how has that gone in terms of bringing the gospel to people? Jan did a little bit of an insight from Czech Republic. What about your own situations? So I'll start with you, Matt, maybe. We'll work across this way.
I was hoping I'd be the last.
I cannot hear anything.
We can.
This is not going to work. Just hold it, Matt. Do see. Should we just proceed, Martin? Yeah. Keep going, Matt. Off you go. We'll try not to interrupt you again.
Okay, well, in a sense, my situation is slightly different. I'm a member of a local church, but I'm not in leadership in the church. I'm not now pastoring a church. I was for 16 years a pastor in Spain, but for the last 10 years I haven't been. So in a sense, almost like as a church member, yeah, we have grappled. We've seen what is happening in society. You've actually said Spain's a Catholic country. It's not, of course. It's I would say post-Catholic. Yeah. And even if it were Catholic, that doesn't actually mean there's much.
Okay, they can hear us.
Not much of an understanding really of gospel truth. Certainly, my understanding of Catholicism in as the way it works in Spain was actually keeping people in ignorance. Of course, until Vatican II, the Bible was a prohibited book anyway. So, just the fact that people in Spain are not really practicing Catholics, apart from those particular times during the year, at say Christmas, Easter, First Communion, birth, death, weddings, the folk religion that comes into play, really not so much, I think, has actually technically changed. So the obstacles are slightly different, perhaps. Yes, we've got Andrew highlighted with materialism and with and all the other isms that we've heard about. So perhaps people are less likely to come to church, but they're just as unlikely as ever in a sense, but for different reasons. So I think my own take would still be that the way to try and approach folk is actually just through individuals witnessing, living out the gospel, living an attractive Christianity, a working Christianity, which is what people have never seen. That they've given up on the Christianity that they might know of, which is imposed to Catholicism in the past. They've thrown out everything and they want nothing to do with God because it doesn't work. So really, rather than trying to find a new method, I think what we're doing in Ciudad Real, I mean, Xavi would perhaps want to disagree with me completely on that, as he does with everything else. But I think what we tend to concentrate on is encouraging Christians to be so full of Christ and in love with Christ, and so consistent in their living out of their Christianity that they're able to interact with other people around them. And that's not really changed. Maybe that's not what you wanted to hear, sorry.
No, that's fine. We want to hear what, however you want to say it, yeah.
I think we're okay with Italian, but apologies for the...
All right. Well, Vitalii, are you receiving me?
Yes, I can hear you, Stephen.
And
yes.
we can hear you very clearly. We were just thinking a little bit about the way that particularly in the realm of evangelism and witness and so on, within your particular context. Now, obviously, Ukraine, you've got multiple factors going on. The church you're in, and I know that you're involved with the seminary, but you're also very much involved with your local church. What about specifically in terms of what your church has done to engage your neighbours with the gospel? How have you gone about that? Have you followed any particular approach?
The history, well, let me say hello to everybody and to thank you for inviting me to participate in this conference. And I am very glad to talk a little bit about the situation in Ukraine. We still have a great freedom in Ukraine, great religious freedom. We have almost no obstacles to preach the gospel freely, and we are really thankful God for that. Of course, the interest in gospel in our society is decreasing. There are some reasons for that, but evangelical church is still growing. And for example, our church, also, although it is a young church, we have a little bit more than 10 years, and it used to be Sunday school, and then gradually turned to be a youth club, and then a few families came around, and there was planted new church. And because of around 70% of our church members are young people, young men, young ladies between 20s and 30s. Most of our outreach is working with youth and teenagers and children, and we have success in this work because our youth workers invite teenagers to our church. We have different clubs and a lot of activities going. So we just invite young people to the church and they come. On the other hand, I personally lead a Bible study group in my home. We started recently, just 1 year ago, with one family, and there was another family just converted Christians, and now we have 3 unchristians coming to our home Bible study group. And it's like that in Ukraine. You invite people and they come to the church, and they come to home Bible study groups now.
Yeah, we've just been hearing from Jan Habel in Czech Republic, which was the exact opposite of that, where he was saying that they invite people and they don't come. So that's encouraging to see. I know you feel very positive about the opportunities that there are today in Ukraine. So perhaps you feel it's probably the best time it's been for many years.
It's true, because the Baptist during the Russian dominion, we survived even during Soviet times, which were even more severe to us. And when Ukrainian got freedom, that we were not prepared even to receive this freedom, to believe that we are now can so freely to preach the gospel, to share, to talk about this.
Yeah.
So we are still enjoying that freedom. Yeah. Praise the Lord.
Yeah. Well, while this sort of the technology is working so well, I'll go to Leonidas and we'll switch across to Greece. Leonidas, good to have you with us. And you do a lot of work with university students in your church, don't you?
Well, hello everybody. I'm really glad to take part in this conference. Yes, our city is a university city. We have a well-established and high-quality university, and it is estimated that there are about 10,000 university students here in our town. What is of special encouragement to us is that we have about 6 or 7 students attending, which is a very sort of tiny percentage regarding the total number of university students. And nevertheless, this is an indication that really secularism rules okay. We would like to see more students coming to our church to listen to the Word of God. But we are very thankful that there is this number of students. And we also have a group of young people from the United States who are heavily involved in the work at the university. I used to do a lot more in the past in the university campus. I have now withdrawn a bit, as there are other people that are more suited as far as age is concerned to do that kind of work. Yes, but and we want to see more young people, university students, coming to listen to the Word of God.
Can I just ask, there's two things that's just striking me. You've got the grip of the Greek Orthodox Church situation. Now, there's two aspects. What's the impact, if any, of that on the students? And then what about the general people in your church in terms of orthodoxy? Does it have any impact? Does it have any influence, and so on?
Yes, certainly, yes. There is a great impact of the Orthodox Church, virtually, well, not on everybody, but on the vast majority of people. What we need to see is a Reformation movement in Greece. Things are gradually changing. The younger generation are less mesmerized by the sort of ritualism of the Greek Orthodox Church, and things are changing gradually. Nevertheless, the general atmosphere is, setting aside secularism, the general atmosphere is that any kind of religious minority is a heresy. This may sound an old-fashioned term that has fallen into oblivion in Western and Northern Europe. Nevertheless, the word heresy is still used. It was just a few days ago I met a young man in the central square, and I simply explained something about the gospel and what we are. And he said, oh, so it's a heresy. No, I protested, it's not a heresy. But you can see the sort of the way people understand things. Anything that is a religious minority, by definition, is a heresy. And that is one of the main obstacles we have in communicating the gospel. This does not discourage me personally, although I feel frustrated by it. Nevertheless, somehow it encourages me and sort of steals my determination to go on in trying to spread the gospel. Yes, that's what I'm trying to do.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. Just going to come to you, Sándor. You know, it's the 30 years since the Berlin Wall and all of that sort of thing, and you've got the sort of post-communist era, but you've also got orthodoxy. Just give us a picture of Transylvania and your ministry and how you approach it, particularly in engaging people with the gospel.
Well, I believe all these isms and different views, worldviews, are like waves in the sea, and they are sweeping over the whole Europe, and in some places they climax. Just imagine the Carpathians. That's how I feel about Romania. These views are climaxing there because they are just colliding with traditional, with the old, with the Orthodox Church, for example. In Romania, 87% of the people call themselves Orthodox, although it's fading. So whatever you heard so far, it's applicable to Romania. I think that means postmodernism. And I try to paint my own picture of all that amalgamation, what we heard now. Among the Hungarians I'm working with there are 1.2 million Hungarians still in Transylvania. You know that that was part of Hungary or under Hungarian rule for over 1,000 years. Therefore, we are the natives there. So that's very important. So we are working among them. Among Hungarians, we have quite a number of Catholics, but Protestantism came to us very soon. So, for example, in the 1590s or early 90s, we had already Hungarian Bible that came through Transylvania. And you know that the first religious freedom was pronounced in Transylvania, first in the world, under our prince, I think Bethlen Gábor it was, if I'm right. Yes, so we had Protestantism as well, so quite a great number of Hungarians are Protestants. We invented, as Hungarians, many good things, but we invented Unitarianism as well, for which we are not very proud as evangelicals, so there is Unitarianism. Although the general picture is that people in Romania, especially the younger people, speaking of Romanians and Hungarians, I think in general, and the more educated, are kind of getting more and more disillusioned of religion at all. So that's the general picture. But interestingly enough, the message of tolerance, although it rings very negatively in our ears, has some good side to it as well, in the sense that in a place like Târgu Mureș, that's very important where we are talking about, because maybe in more traditional areas, other people would say something different. But for example, in Târgu Mureș, people are kind of opened to new things. That's part of liberalism, isn't it? So therefore, although you see materialism, individualism, relativism really present among these people, there is some kind of curiosity to the new, like used to be sect, like Baptists,
Yes,
or
right.
just evangelicals. So sometimes they would be curious to see, sometimes, not very often, this is not characteristic. Sometimes we get people into church just as hard as you would, maybe in the UK, but there is a certain kind of curiosity because of this liberalism. So there are some good sides to it as well. But although many people would maybe be curious about hearing new ideas, like the Athenians, the gap of the worldviews are widening.
Right.
You know, from evangelicalism towards the very, very liberal thinking. So, for example, in social media, you find views expressed very, very similar, like views here. Last year, We had a referendum on the definition of marriage. Our laws still say that marriage is between a man and a woman, but Christians in general, and again we find allies in Catholics, Orthodox and so on in questions of abortion or just the definition of marriage. All the churches pulled together and initiated this referendum so that the government, well, we initiated that a couple of years ago, but the government was forced to put out this referendum after all. People weren't just interested to go and vote. And so the vote didn't turn out to our favor, so that we would change the constitution as well, which can be changed much harder than just the law. Maybe within a few hours it can change in Romania. And since that referendum so-called fell, we already felt the pressure, the much bigger pressure from the LGBTQ sort of community and also voices around our country. So this would be a general picture. There are the challenges for evangelism. If there will be another question, I will speak more, but I think it's enough.
What's the population of Targa Mariash, your city?
Yes, 35,000 people at the present, out of which 60,000 are still Hungarian.
Right, okay. Xavi, just coming to you, in addition to your work in Ciudad Real, you also go out to Cuenca and other churches to help them ministering. What about in terms of sort of helping them in evangelism in their communities? Have you done any particular things there to encourage that? Apart from obviously the living out the Christian life, which is vitally important. What other things have you done in those churches?
I was prepared to answer the same question, and now I have to think.
I'll tell you what.
No, it's okay.
Give us your first answer, and then you
I'm
can
kidding.
come back.
It's okay.
Thing is, you stimulate lots of things listening to all these different things.
That's correct. Yeah, we support 2 church missions. One in La Solana, which is in Ciudad Real province. It's a small group of believers, 10, 12 maximum. But they're very faithful. They've been working and evangelizing this town for 50 plus years, like 54 years, I believe. And Cuenca, it's been also going on for more than 30 years. And again, it's a small congregation, like probably 20 people. And neither of these churches have a pastor. So you see a lot of this encouragement, disappointment, and struggling. And because Cuenca was planted by Luis and Pilar, so it's a very dear church to us. So we try to help them. I'm supervising these 2 churches, but I do not have much time. So I spend like a Sunday or a weekend monthly in every church. And then I try to be there for them, in a WhatsApp group or something like that. Try to help them to develop and to use their gifts, because we all have gifts as believers, and just trying to be there to be supportive. And but it's quite moving. It moves your heart. It's just quite painful in a sense, to see them. I mean, sheep without a pastor. Of course, we got Jesus as our pastor, but you know what I mean. But it's also very rewarding to see the way they react, their love, and of course, it's very easy to establish some bonds with them, and very encouraging too. Okay. But, yeah.
No, that's helpful. Now, we maybe for the last bit of this, it'd be good to get some questions from the floor, as it were. And you can direct your question to any of these men. There should be another ice cream floating around. No, it's not actually, it's just a normal microphone, this one. It's just a cone without the ice cream. Yeah. All right. So if you've got a question, maybe put your hand up. Jonathan will get the mic to you, and then you can tell me, or just say which one of the good men you want to direct the question to. Anybody got a question for us? There's no pressure, but there is an opportunity. And if you don't take the opportunity, I'll soon get rid of it. Okay, right? there we are, Simon's over there. Jonathan?
Thank you. Maybe get a question going with Matt. For literature, what's the take-up of literature, and how does that reflect the climate?
Yeah, that's my real hat here. Is I work with Peregrino, which is a publishing company. Yeah, literature. Really, probably from our point of view, I think my take would be that the literature is to help the churches to get enthused about Christ and love Christ and witness Christ. So a lot of what we do is aimed at helping pastors, giving them good material, but also the churches, church members, so devotional books as well, Bible study books. It's growing, and that's really encouraging. So, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we had our Passion for the Gospel conference in Madrid that Andrew and I are involved in. Xavi was there as well. And, you know, the bookstall would have filled this building. Probably the 12, 15 massive tables of literature in Spanish. Good, reformed, solid literature. It wasn't all ours, but we sell it all. And so to see that take up, the way the churches are taking literature, using literature, building themselves up so that they then can go out into the world and reach their own communities. We don't do, to be honest, an awful lot of evangelistic material. We probably should be doing more, but we're at the point of actually trying to work out what to do. People don't read. Non-Christians don't read, really. So a 16-page tract of tightly or closely typed with no illustrations isn't really going to do an awful lot, apart from on bonfire night. So we're looking at that. It's one way that we're trying to respond. I mean, we have ideas what we need to be doing with tracts, but it's still a tract is only really a means of supporting and helping a Christian speak about their faith. So I don't know if that answers your question, but thank you.
Oh, that's helpful. I'm just thinking as well, because we've got these three good men around today, would have anybody got a question direct across to Greece or Ukraine? Surely there must be, at a company like this, come on, there must be a good question. A provocative, good, thoughtful question. There we go. Jean.
Thank you. A question for Leonidas. I know that you used to do a lot of work in the squares in the summer and have a literature table, and I wondered if there was a greater take-up and interest, more opportunities nowadays, or whether that was just no longer a useful way to get out into the community to share the gospel.
Well, the work is still going on in the central square, and it's like a quasi open air preaching. As people pass by, they can only be within hearing distance for 3, 4, 5 seconds perhaps. So what I try to do is say just a sentence encapsulating the gospel, and also I know that there are some concepts which are really shared by Christians and non-Christians. For example, the concept of love. And although love your neighbor as yourself is not the gospel, nevertheless, this is a useful phrase I try to use. And people are sort of more allured by that command into sort of listening to something more. Everybody talks about love, and people mean different things about it. Nevertheless, it's a positive idea. Love your neighbor as yourself. I can I can sort of say, and people seem to be more at ease by such a sort of nice phrase, and that can lead into the presentation of the gospel. As I said, love your neighbor as yourself is not the gospel, but nevertheless, we do have encouragements and try to engage people in conversations.
Okay, thank you. Yes, there's one there. Maybe for Vitalii, is it? Is it for Vitalii? Excellent. Well, we'll probably make this the last question, and then we'll just sort of draw it together because lunch beckons. Right, okay.
I wonder, or we wonder perhaps, how the gospel has been affected in Crimea after the annexation, and also what is happening in East Ukraine with the war that's going on then. Has it affected the gospel in general in the country anyway?
Thank you for your question. Yes, many churches, I can tell it's literally moved from eastern part of Ukraine to the territories which are in control in Ukrainian, under Ukrainian control. But many evangelical churches in the eastern part, they suffered a lot. Not so much in Crimea, because the Baptists in Crimea, they managed to join to Russian Baptist Union, and therefore they are not affected with persecutions. But eastern part of Ukraine, those territories which are under control of terrorists, the Christians really suffered there. Church building, very often the terrorists can take out this building, and churches, people from the church, they gather at their home. But even in that, when they gather at home, they can be fined with different penalties. The terrorists can come to their church services and just stop them. But there are different situations. In Luhansk, I think it's more difficult situation than in Donetsk, the two regions affected with this. But a lot of Christians just moved. Church where I am attending, just a few streets near us, there is a church which came from Luhansk region. Almost all church with all members moved to Kyiv, and now they are in Kyiv and they are growing. It's an interesting fact. They are testifying about their faith to Kievan people.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thanks to all of our chaps for their contributions, and those that are here you can speak to a little bit more. If you want to know how to contact Vitalii or Leonidas, we can provide those details, and you can, if you wanted to pursue it. But thank you very much for, I know you're 2 hours ahead of us, so you've missed your lunch.
We'll catch up.
We're about to have lunch now.